Watermark Golf Media.
Okay, everyone, settle down. Let's try this one more time. This is the Lip Outs podcast promo with Matt Ginella. Is this right? Take 19?
Hey guys, Matt Ginella from Golf Channel and Golf Advisor. When I'm not flying around the world playing some of the best courses on the planet with celebrities or athletes or former tour players, and I have 30 to 45 minutes free with absolutely nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing better to do with my time, that's when I listen to the Lip Outs podcast.
Well, okay, we'll make that work.
In a world where talk is cheap, someone should be paying you to listen to this podcast. It's the Lip Outs Podcast with your host, golf course architect, author, and former looper for the Llama, Nathan Crace. And now, from deep within the recesses of the basement beneath the studio at Watermark Golf Media, the man of the hour, the tower of power, too sweet to be sour, make you say, woo, like Jerry Clower. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Crace.
Thank you. This is the Lip Outs Podcast. Today we have a very special guest on the podcast. If you watch the Golf Channel at all, you've no doubt seen him on Morning Drive, maybe on location at a major. You've also seen him travel the world in search of great golf, including on his new show for Golf Advisor, Round Trip. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Matt Ginella. Hey, Matt.
Hey, buddy. Good to be with you.
I know we've been trying to get this lined up for weeks. I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Of course, I'm honored to be on, to be honest with you.
Before we get started, I want to give Matt a plug. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Matt Ginella GC and on Instagram at Matt_Ginella, where you can follow his travels around the world and dream wistfully of playing some of the courses he gets to play for a living. So, Matt, are you in Orlando right now, getting ready for the holidays?
Yeah, oddly enough, I'm home, which feels amazing. We did about 207 days on the road this year, rough estimate.
Wow.
And so to be home right now, it feels great.
I was actually in New Orleans yesterday at a luncheon with Jim Nance, and you want to talk about somebody who travels a lot. He may travel more than you. It'd be a close race.
Yeah, I love Jim Nance. It's great for the game of golf, obviously. I got to play with him a little bit earlier this year, actually. And I was surprised at the fact that he is just as nice as you'd expect him to be.
Oh, he's unbelievably nice. We had a luncheon there. Of course, he was in town for the Saints-Steelers game coming up Sunday. Also amazed at the amount of homework he puts in. He was leaving the lunch to go spend 4 hours at the Saints training facility to do show prep.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
But anyway, back to you. So you're in Orlando. You told me about a year ago, or maybe a little longer, the next time I get to Orlando, I need to call you and go play, I believe it was Winter Park. That's the 9-hole municipal that they renovated a year or so ago?
Yeah. It's just, I'm continuing to be reminded of what an amazing story this is. A little, mini municipal, par 35, but a couple drivable par 4s, reachable par 5s, 3 par 3s. You cross the street 6 times, runs kind of sort of spines its way through the middle of the town of Winter Park. And it's over 100 years old. It's kind of had a lot of different lives and a lot of little moments of its history. But right down the street from Rollins College, where Pete and Alice Dye actually met. Pete says he's never played it. Alice said she only played it once in college, but now it's had this revitalized life thanks to Keith Rebb and Riley Johns. Blake Conant was on their crew. These are this pack of young architects who are descendants of all the way up from Dye to Core and Doak and Crenshaw and even some time with the Gil. So you get the lineage of the the best of the modern minimalists at work here at WP9. They took a golf course that was losing $250,000 a year, and it's going to do way better than break even this year. And upwards of about making $100,000. But more important than that, you've got generational golf happening on a daily basis. From every time I drive by, it sort of warms your heart. If you love golf at all, if you love community and camaraderie and families and fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, and every other combination you can imagine, it's all happening at WP9 every day. and they cleaned up the golf course. They removed some trees. They got rid of the thatched grass that wasn't allowing, any kind of healthy growth or drainage. They redid the drainage. They create contours to the fairways and leading up to the greens. They redid all the bunkers and positioned them in a way that makes sense. It's just one of the most charming, hour, 90 minutes you're ever going to spend on a golf course. And, I happen to live a block and a half away, which I feel truly blessed.
Right.
If there's one great benefit of being here and being near Orlando and at the Golf Channel, it's that I get to play WP9 on a regular basis.
Well, and I think the other thing about, as you mentioned, the generational aspect of it, more courses like that help to bring more juniors into the game and allow some of the older players maybe to play a little longer than they thought they could. And when you don't have to climb in and out of a bunker every time, and it's not as challenging, it's not as daunting maybe to the beginner.
No, I mean, what's great about WP9 is even on weekends, in peak season, you're going to pay $18 to play golf. And juniors are, basically nothing. Kids essentially play for free. I've got a 19-month-old son. He's going to, he's learning to play golf at the WP9. They're just showing up at the end of my rounds, or we go to the third green and chip and putt while, move aside while play is going through. It's revitalized sort of and brought me back to my childhood days of taking on the game. And it's just, and I see it happening with a lot of people that I play with or watch play the WP9. You hit every club in your bag. It feels a lot like golf. It's a little bit like 3-on-3 basketball. I could play 3-on-3 basketball for the rest of my life. Half court 3-on-3 basketball. WP9 is sort of a pleasant and charming variation of what we consider a classic 18-hole, par 72, 6,500 yard experience. And it's just condensed into sort of this perfect little package of joy.
Sounds like fun. The next time I get down there, I'll have to call you. I'll have to go try. I've been trying to get down there anyway to go play Shingle Creek with Thad Layton from Arnold Palmer Golf Design. Yeah. Another Mississippi State graduate, by the way. In fact,
Nice.
if I was going to the bowl game to watch the Bulldogs beat up on Iowa, we might could work that out. But I'm not going to be able to get down there this year. But it does. I really do.
Thad,
think.
not to interrupt.
No, go
not
ahead.
to interrupt you, but Thad Layton just played in the WP9 Skins game last Monday. Thad, as you say, of Arnold Palmer Design. I'm here living in Orlando because Arnold Palmer started the Golf Channel in Orlando. Right. Keith Rebb, redoes the WP9, played with Thad in the Monday Skins game. So the connection of all the different parts and pieces and Palmer and Orlando and Winter Park 9 and Rebb and Thad all happened last Monday, which is, again, another version of golf linking souls.
It never ceases to amaze me when you start talking to other golfers how small the world really is. How many people know other people and play with other people. And I'm assuming Thad cleaned up. He's a pretty good player, cleaned up in his Skins game. But
no skins for Thad. No skins for Thad. But I suspect he'll be back.
I'll have to text him about that. Well, anyway, I mentioned at the opening, obviously, you seem to be on the Golf Channel every time you turn it on. I mean, you do seem ubiquitous on the Golf Channel. Every time I turn it on, you're on Morning Drive or you're somewhere or on the news show. But it really is your dream job. I know I've heard you say that before, but I thought you might want to elaborate on it.
Well, I, as you can imagine, I've just finished 6 years now at the Golf Channel, which is, it feels like I just blinked.
That time flies.
I was 11 years at Golf Digest and a little over 6 years at Sports Illustrated prior to that. And, print being what print is, and 6 years ago trying to figure out, okay, what is my next move? What are my other, opportunities and possibilities? Molly Solomon, who's, the executive producer of Golf Channel, I had worked with her husband, Jeff Russell, and I, at Golf World, as both the director of photography and doing some travel pieces for Golf World magazine as well. And they had both, Molly and Jeff had both come down to run the Golf Channel. I get the call saying, would you like to be our lifestyle representative for Morning Drive in this ensemble cast we're putting together? And that to me was, yet another one of those sliding door moments. If it never happens, if that phone call never comes, where am I now? I don't know. But what the Golf Channel has done is just given me an opportunity to continue to tell stories, to use this platform to try to enhance the game of golf. We try to leave a course better than what we played, right? Every time, fix a couple divots or ball marks, or kind of just look around. You leave the course a little better than you found it. I'm hoping to leave the game a little bit better than I came to it, and that this is what an opportunity and platform to try to accomplish that. If there's any story I want to tell, if there's any story I stumble upon that feels like, wow, this needs to get to the masses, I have that opportunity now, and. I just can't say enough about, yes, this is a dream job. And I do get to see the world, and I get to play some of the greatest golf courses, known to mankind. But the thing that I'm going to take away with me is so much more than just, oh, wow, I got to play the 16th at Cypress, or, the 13th at Pacific Dunes, or whatever the case may be. I get to say that I met all these amazing people all around the world with all these different other stories and interests and passions, and tap into that as we go around and consume the game of golf. And that to me means more than anything.
Well, we could do 2 or 3 hours worth of podcast just on you and Arnold Palmer, I'm sure, and what you've been able to learn and take from him since you've been there. But in fact, yesterday I asked people to tweet questions to me to ask you during the podcast, and we'll get to those a little later on. But
Okay.
Before we get to those, I do want to get a little more into your background, where you grew up, what life was like for a young Matt Ginella when you first discovered the game, and that type of thing.
First round of golf I played, I can remember it like it was yesterday. Al Cohen, the father of my buddy who lived around the corner from me in Northern California, Santa Rosa, California. Matt Cohen, Matt Cohen was a young, successful junior golfer in Santa Rosa, California, had a ton of talent, sort of took to the game when not a lot of other people were. And he and his dad, Al, would go out to the Sonoma County Fairgrounds and play the little short course that ran on the infield of the horse track there at Sonoma County Fairgrounds, still there to this day. And I'll never forget, they said, hey, you want to go play golf? I called my mom, can I go play golf? Yeah, I'd go play golf. And I remember Al Cohen allowing me, as probably a, 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, to tee it up wherever I wanted to. So knowing it made it a little easier for me to make contact, get the ball airborne, have fun. I remember going around playing my first round of golf, teeing up the ball wherever I wanted, and thought that was so cool because that allowed me to have some sense of success. And that was the moment where I said, wow, golf is fun and golf is cool. I played every sport growing up in Santa Rosa, California: baseball, football, basketball, soccer. I rode horses, and that ultimately became my focus was 3-day eventing. I had 5 horses. We competed everywhere from Arizona to Oregon. It was pretty intense. We would ride and train before school, after school. So I was a horseback rider, and then the day of my biggest horse match in Fresno, California at Ramtap, my horse colicked, wasn't able to compete. And I was senior year in high school, trying to figure out, do I, keep riding horses or do I go to college? And on that day, I decided horses were done. That was a sign. I had trained for 6 months for this event. It was all gone away. My dad said, hey, let's go play golf. We went out to a little, municipal in Fresno, California. And it was that day that I kind of decided I'm going to take all of the energy and effort I've been putting into horseback riding, and I'm going to put it into golf. And I went out for the high school golf team that year at Cardinal Newman High School in Santa Rosa, and made the team. They had 4 or 5 really good players, but they needed some bodies on the back end.
Right.
I happened to be one of the bodies, and went on to play at St. Mary's College because they didn't have a good team. The 4 years I was at St. Mary's College in Northern California, it was I'd graduated in 95. Tiger turns pro in 96. So it was. I worked at golf courses my whole life. Oakmont Golf Course in Santa Rosa, California. Fountain Grove Golf Course in Santa Rosa. I ran tee sheets, picked the range, changed grips. Charles Schultz was a member at the Oakmont Golf Course in Santa Rosa. I got to, I got to play golf with Tommy Smothers in Santa Rosa. So I had fallen in love with the game and from every aspect. And I thought for sure I was going to be a superintendent. Before I got my internship at Sports Illustrated, I was taking paperwork to be to go to Penn State's agronomy school.
Yeah.
And when Sports Illustrated offered me the full-time job, that was another sliding doors moment. I went Sports Illustrated and journalism and sort of shelved the agronomy, superintendent route. And so here I am today, getting paid to play the game of golf and using my backyard as my golf course.
Right.
Growing grass and planting plants.
Well, it almost seems like sometimes the stars seem to line up, and we've already established that you probably have one of the best jobs in the world, which you freely admit to, and I know all the golfers out there probably believe it as well. But I did see in an interview, and I can't remember where it was, you mentioned that you feel like you've never really worked a day in your life, but I think that might be selling yourself short because all the travel and everything and how you got to that point. Why does it just not feel like a job because it's so much fun?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just it. There are a lot of long days. Anytime we do a Golf Advisor round trip and we're out shooting, it's 4 clothing changes. It's sunrise to sunset and sometimes beyond. We just got back from 3 weeks shooting in San Diego, in Hawaii, back to the Bahamas, and then on to Mexico. It was an amazing trip. Met a lot of amazing people. We got a lot accomplished. We do a lot of work, and being an intern at Sports Illustrated, getting to this point, I did everything, whatever they asked me. I worked 7 days a week, and for anything from doing the laundry of the director of photography because that's what he asked me to do, and if I didn't do it, someone else would. So, cleaning out the basement of the Time Life building full of, light packs. I used to light gymnasiums for photographers and carry power packs into the corners of basketball gymnasiums when I was at Sports Illustrated, which that's real work. But I loved every minute of it. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I thought at that time this was the coolest thing. Been on the floor for NBA All-Star games at Madison Square Garden where Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were going at it, and I was, changing, cameras for John Beaver, one of the greatest sports photographers of all time, at San Francisco 49er games when I was in college in, muck and mud and getting $75 and, just hauling around a 40-pound camera trying to keep up with Beaver. All those things led to these amazing opportunities that I have now. And I do honestly actually believe I haven't truly worked a day in my life because even on the most grueling days of quote work that I've had getting to wherever it is I am now, it never felt like where I've had the benefit of never, ever looking at my watch and thinking, is it time to go home? Can I get to it? I only have an hour of work and then I get to go home. I have never looked at my watch in my whole professional career of 23 years of sort of, getting paid to follow sports. And that was always the goal.
I know for people out there who, when you say, well, we spent 2 weeks shooting in San Diego and Hawaii and the Bahamas, and there are a lot of people, oh, it must be nice. But I like that you talked about the background and what it took to get you there, because obviously you weren't just plucked off the street somewhere and hauled off to host a golf show around the world. And I feel the same way to some extent about my job, and I feel like I'm the luckiest guy on the face of the planet to get to do what I love for a living. But again, it's all the steps that you take there from high school and college and working your way up to get to that point, whether you're building a career or you're building an office building or you're building a bridge. I think the people who seize on those opportunities, and you have that kind of that internal engine, that grit and that self-discipline to look at the finish line and not worry about where you are right now, I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, and that all, that we're a product of our environment, so I give my parents a lot of credit. They never, they made sure that if I ever, had anything or got anything, I appreciated it. I worked, from as early as I can remember, because you needed to make money to earn things. They worked their asses off to give me what I had, and they were going to make sure I did the same. And that's, that to me is now, as a new father, I now appreciate all of how that all happens, right? So work ethic and integrity and aspirations and goals and chasing dreams and doing what you love. My parents were the biggest fans of, hey, I don't care what you do. If you love it, we love it. We love that you love it. That's it. And, and they provided that kind of support and the education. I was in the photography department at Sports Illustrated, and realized in the photo department, I wanted to try to help tell the stories and not just help illustrate the stories. And realized that all the writers at Sports Illustrated had gone to Columbia University, applied to Columbia University while I was at Sports Illustrated, and got in. And, then I realized I was 29 years old and went back to get a master's in journalism at Columbia, and worked full time, did Columbia part time, took me 2.5 years, and got the job at director of photography at Golf Digest while I was at Columbia, and had to decide, yet another sliding doors moment. A, going back to Columbia. B, deciding to stay at Columbia when I got the job at Golf Digest, because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to handle the workload of both doing journalism school and director of photography of both Golf Digest and Golf World magazines. Somehow I pulled it off. And that master's degree allowed for Jerry Tardy at Golf Digest to give me the job from director of photography to travel writer, because I had that expensive piece of paper that said, hey, I can now write instead of just try to help illustrate the stories. And that's when I got the job as travel writer for Golf Digest, which led to where I'm at now, which is sort of travel journalist and travel insider at Golf Channel and Golf Advisor. So that, I don't know. That's how it all goes.
It's a great story, really. In fact, when I was doing some research for this podcast, I was thinking back to the days of Matty G on Golf Digest. And I don't know how many people are listening remember that, but they had a series, Where is Matty G? And you would travel around and go to these different golf courses. And then as things became more digital, I know you were writing a blog. And I found a very interesting story about the Masters from 2009. It seems like a million years ago when you read it, but it wasn't even 10 years ago. When you were at Sports Illustrated, you had to fly the film home from the Masters. And that just seems, again, like a million years ago when we think about how everything's digital these days. But you wrote about having to leave with the film on Saturday so you could edit on Sunday and Monday. You had to leave your dad at the Masters, and this was the year Nicklaus made his run on Sunday, and fans were thinking he might pull it off again. So I thought you might want to share the story that you told about your dad calling you at the end of the day.
Yeah, that I do believe I have that message he left me on my work phone that day from a payphone at Augusta National. But it was, as you said, in 1999, we was pre-digital. We didn't sports. I left Sports Illustrated in 2001. Golf Digest and Golf World went to digital photography at that time. 2001, 2002, we started making that transition. SI didn't go to it until about 2002, 2003. Even though the wires were digital at that time, photographers for Sports Illustrated in 99 still shot rolls and rolls and rolls of film. And we would typically have 4 or 5 photographers covering a major championship. So as photo editor, I was trying to help coordinate where they were and what they shot and making sure all the stories were properly illustrated. getting some imagery to go with various features and news events that took place. And then, you'd have to break away because at some point you had to be back in the office to go through the film, edit the pictures, and present what you thought should be the choices to illustrate the stories or the cover or whatever it may be. And so I would always, for those early years back before credentials were so scrutinized, you'd get photography assistant passes, and I would get one from my dad and get one from my uncle, and you could get people in to the Masters back then, and so I had gotten my dad and my uncle Bill that year, I think, into the Masters, and Uncle Bill went home, and my dad was there by himself. I'd gone home with the film, and he stayed back to watch that Sunday round and started following Nicklaus and was literally following Jack hole by hole while Jack made that run and ended up, atop the leaderboard before sort of the leaders had really gone off, or at least had gotten to the back nine. And my dad ran to a payphone. He was out of breath and left me this amazing message, hey, Matto, I just got to call you. I just followed Jack and he's at the top of the leaderboard and I've had the most amazing day, and it was as though, it was a kid opening up all his gifts at Christmas, and he had, his whole list had been fulfilled. And I'll take that to my grave. He'll probably take it to his grave. That day, that moment, that energy, that passion, that call, and something that I, think of me from Santa Rosa, California, playing at Sonoma County Fairgrounds, going on to being able to get my dad into the Masters and let him watch one of his idols, have a run at Augusta National and then tell me about it was connecting a lot of pretty cool dots.
And running up the hill, for anyone who's not been there, running up the hill to the clubhouse at Augusta. And I walked up the hill on 10, and I had to take a nap when I got to the top. So that's no small feat in its own. But that's a great story. The Matty G days on Golf Digest, that was my first recollection of hearing your name and what you were doing. But I think with the travel stories and the buddies trips, someone younger doing that at that time, I think it really opened up the world of golf travel to a younger segment of the market. And, we were still kind of riding that tiger wave, and everything just seemed to building. And you think of snowbirds, you think of retirees and older people, a little more seasoned in their years, going down south for the winter and playing golf. But I think I've seen more and more younger groups of men and women starting to get involved in this. Are you seeing the same thing?
Well, yeah, I think if you go back to 2006, when I really started at Digest writing these travel stories, having spent a big portion of my life already going on buddies trips, but not even really realizing or calling them buddies trips. It was my annual trip with my uncle, my annual trip, with a few buddies. And then, my first trip to Bandon Dunes, all that happened. And then I get this job in 2006 at Digest, and Jerry Tardy says, all right, you're going to have to produce 8 pages a month, come up with some ideas and concepts and how you're going to do it. And we came up with the away game, which is a 3-page article on a destination, which is essentially what I'm doing now for Golf Channel and Golf Advisor, which is doing that away game, sort of telling the story of a destination, hoping to inspire someone to consider taking a trip there if that suits their needs and wants. And then we came up with this Golf Digest Ambush, a 1-page article on buddies trips. I probably got over 10,000 entries for people saying, hey, come write a story about our trip. And I did 12 a year, for 5 years, probably 6 years. So, and just parachuting in and immersing myself in these annual trips. And it, in some cases, was ladies, some cases was couples, and most cases it was a group of guys. And sometimes in their 20s, and sometimes they were in their 70s, and sometimes it was a mix of all of the above. And that's when I think we all kind of realized, oh my God, there is this untapped kind of source of or a layer or a culture of the game, known as what we now refer to as a buddies trip. It was always happening. I just don't think people realized everyone else was doing it, or everyone was doing it to the degree that everybody was doing it, or going to the different places that everybody was going, or had the traditions that they all had, whether it was a funny trophy or a pay out the guy who finishes dead last so he gets his money back, any number of things we stumbled upon. And that to me has been one of the greatest sort of components of what I've been able to do, and why this is not work, is because being able to tell stories or sort of unearth this component or culture of the game known as the buddies trip has greatly enhanced, I think, the way we kind of see and consume the game, and realize that, hey, if I'm not on a buddies trip, or if I'm not planning one now, I need to get on it, because these are precious days and moments with people we don't get to see as often as we'd like to. Yes, golf is happening, but it's always sort of a sidebar to the camaraderie and the connection to the people we love. And sometimes you meet new people on these trips that you go on to have great moments and memories with. And that to me is definitely a cool component of golf, and a byproduct of what I've been able to do as a profession.
Ooh, I've got an idea for a new show, as if you didn't have enough to do. Matty G's Uber service, and you show up in these towns where it's in Myrtle Beach or Scottsdale or Mississippi Gulf Coast where snowbirds go, and you show up in an Uber to take them out to dinner and see if they recognize you, and then you ambush their round the next day.
Well, I have a couple of ideas and show ideas, and I pitch them on a regular basis, as you can imagine. Sometimes they fall on deaf ears, and sometimes they become reality. But I'll keep pitching, to say the least.
Well, speaking of reality, I've been watching Round Trip. For those of you, if you're not watching it, set your DVR and record it. They've I don't know, about 5 or 6 at least episodes that have already aired that you can set that they do replay. And I think the appeal of any travel show has always been the sense where the viewer can be somewhere without having to actually go. They can see it on their TV. They don't have to fight the airport or go somewhere. In this show, you've kind of become the virtual tour guide, and I like the twist at the end when you talk about these trips through Golf Advisor for the viewers to actually visit and go play these same places they just saw on TV, and play it with you and see it firsthand just the way you did. That's something obviously you don't get on the Travel Channel.
Well, that's we this time last year we were in meetings and kind of pitching the idea of this show, and working with Golf Advisor, and utilizing Golf Channel as a platform to say, okay, what would a 30-minute show look like? It's essentially an extension of what was Ginella's Journeys for 5 years that we were doing within Morning Drive, taking 6 to 8, 10-minute segments and making them into 23 minutes of content in a 30-minute show package. And that it's, I've always said this from the beginning, there's 3 goals to what I'm trying to do in travel. I want to inform the viewer. I want to inspire the viewer, and if we can, hopefully entertain. And I do that through the eyes and the passions and the energy of celebrities, athletes, locals, whoever it is. My producer, Alex Apeghi, has been with me all 6 years. We work together to try to identify the best person or people to try to help tell a course or a resort or a destination's story. And we try to, I think the viewer gravitates or reacts to the people we interview, their passion and energy for a particular destination. And then, all the while I'm kind of consuming it as well. And sometimes we break off and do some sort of adventurous sort of sidebar, or, something that you can do off the golf course. We try to also include, in the spirit of Anthony Bourdain and all that he did in Parts Unknown, we want to also always try to include some sort of food element, because there's no better way of getting a slice of a particular culture than through food. So these are kind of all the ingredients that are going into what we're trying to accomplish. I've got an amazing crew. As you know, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. So Alex Upeghi, Rex Lint, Aaron Mendez has been on a lot, Mike Hagedorn, and we got Palmer. We got Trish Stevens is now part of the team, putting it all together on the back end. Mike Lowe's the general manager of Golf Advisor, and without any of all this teamwork and support, we got nothing.
It's funny because I recorded the show and I watched the first 2 episodes that I watched. I didn't watch them in order, and I can't remember the particular courses, but on both shows you were there with Reese Jones. And so I thought, well, this is a round trip with Matt Ginella and Reese Jones. And then I obviously realized, because, again, I was watching him out of order. Reese Jones, though, great guy. And a little sidebar, I got to play Congressional years ago when we had our ASGCA annual meeting in Washington, D.C. And, of course, Reese redesigned the golf course for the U.S. Open years ago. And when I got to my cart they had gloves loaded up, and I got to the cart, and on the sign it says Reese Jones, Nathan Crace. And I was so nervous. I just went to the driving range and just started hitting balls because I don't even know why I was nervous. I didn't want to embarrass myself, I guess. And we get back to the cart, and we're driving out to whatever hole we started on. It was a shotgun start. And within 5 minutes, you'd have thought we'd known each other for 20 years. I mean, just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
He is a gentleman. I will say that. Nathan, I think one of the another one of sort of the aspects that's so amazing for me, and I'm so appreciative for what I get to do, is spending time with all these different architects. And I Reese Jones at Danzante Bay, which is where he was a guest on our first show, and he sort of talked us through the vision there and the golf course he created in Loreto, Mexico, which is sort of the east coast of the Baja Peninsula. Sia Cortez, really unbelievable. Owen Perry, the owner, what he's doing there. And Reese Jones and his team did a phenomenal job on that golf course. TPC now, Danzante Bay. Everybody who goes and plays it loves it. It's spectacular. It's kind of a mix between Banff Springs and the mountain course at La Quinta, and I'm trying to think of other kind of courses that are sort of at the base or sort of surrounded by these mountains that are so impressive. But also you throw in the craggly, scraggly coastline there of overlooking the Sea of Cortez. So you got this amazing mix of what's surrounding you. And then you have a very fun, playable golf course that's in perfect condition with a lot of memorable moments and holes. And so Reese Jones did that. And then he was also part of the Reynolds Lake Oconee story, because he was available and he had built one of the golf courses there. So it just so happens that he was there. But he is a sweet guy, gets a lot of criticism from a lot of the sort of the hard line modern minimalists. And I don't love every Reese Jones golf course I've played, but I certainly like both of those at both Lake Oconee and Danzante Bay. And aside from all of that, I find him to be very interesting to talk to, and he's got a lot of great insights, and he's got a very thick skin, which I really appreciate. It doesn't bother him when people, rip and ridicule some of the work he's done. He knows that in the big scheme of things, he's proud of the body of the work he's done, and I think he should be.
No, and there's a big world. There are different types of golf courses for different people, and everybody has an opinion, and that's fine. But one thing that I have found is that you can't just rubber stamp every single thing. So and I had this discussion with Ryan Ballinger on his podcast. It's almost like the golf course architecture fan world has split into two sides, and like Washington D.C. is, where you're either a minimalist or you're not, and you there is no in between. And I don't buy into that. I think there's got to be common ground for both sides. But the Danzante Bay golf course visually is stunning. Just watching it during the show, absolutely unbelievable. As you mentioned, there are some people who just feel like that's artificial, as though any golf course isn't artificial. I mean, you've got to move some dirt. You've got to create things to create a golf course. Or as Pete Dye said, why do you need a golf course architect? So, but no, go ahead.
No, I think all of that is true, and it is an interesting time in terms of the discourse of architecture, and I think all of it is good. I think the hardliners one way and the hardliners the other way, from Tom Doak to Tom Fazio. I think and everything in between is just all it's not all good, but I think the conversations around all of it are good. I think the ongoing education, and perspectives and insights from anyone, from the armchair architects and critics and to the guys who are actually in the dirt. Everybody has a voice now, and everybody has access to a phone. Therefore, everybody has a platform, and a lot of when I started at Morning Drive. Okay, this is 6 years ago. I tell this story all the time. When I started Morning Drive, they had me on talking about various things, my top 5 lists and various golf courses that are the tour playing that week, et cetera. And I would, invariably say the name of the architect as to who built the course that the tours are playing that week or whatever trip I was on. And I was told by one of the producers of Morning Drive, hey, no more mentioning the architect's name. It's a little too inside baseball. I think it's kind of over the head of most of our viewers, and so we'd like you to not do that. Well, of course, that got resolved, and it was I went to fight for what I thought was, hey, I'm learning about architecture. I love the ongoing education I'm having. Why don't we let the viewer have that same kind of experience? I'm happy to sort of share what it is that I'm learning and what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing out in this world of golf, not just from a hey, I pay and I go play and I try to make a score, but how about let's bring the golf course to life by understanding a little bit more as to who did it, why they did it a certain way, who they did it for, and the changes that have been made over the years. And that was it. And now we've had 5 years of what they call Design Week on Morning Drive, and we have regular architects appearing on the show and features on architects and developments, and we're in the dirt on a regular basis with what's happening in the world of golf. And that, to me, I'm especially proud of, and I'm happy and grateful that that Morning Drive and Golf Channel and Golf Advisor have given me that platform the last 6 years.
No, I think golfers, just anyone, but golfers particularly, they like to know what's inside and what makes it tick. And I don't know that you can have too much inside baseball and I love the Architects Week that you guys do, because it does give a lot of people some insight into things they would otherwise have no idea what goes into it. And as you said, there are plenty of armchair architects. I'm fortunate to be able to do it for a living, but there are plenty of people who have that thirst to know what goes into it. And it's great to be able to provide that to them.
Well, the more I learn, the more I want to know. And that, but I do think there is a segment of the insiders that I think need to be mindful of the fact that, it's not their way or the highway. It's not one way or no way. It's and you got to be careful to sort of not talk at people, but I think I always try to remember to talk with people. And I think that's important. I think, when people come to this sort of watering hole of architectural knowledge, you can have two very different experiences. You can have one that's like, hey, wow, come on. Yeah. You want to know? Yeah, I'm happy to share and inform and give you my perspective opinion. And then there's another experience in which you can come and basically get run out of town. Not unlike what you might find at a local surf spot in, the North Shore of Kauai. And that's surfers want to grow the sport, but they don't want more people surfing their waves,
Right.
And that's there's a fine line there between, oh, yeah, we want more people to know about architecture. Well, then be a little more warm and welcoming to people who want to know it. Because if you're going to run them out of town, then you're kind of defeating your whole purpose in the first place.
Sure. And social media is a great way to do that. Great platform to educate people and inform them and kind of give them a little peek inside. And speaking of social media, get to the first question that was sent to me on Twitter. They wanted me to ask you. This is from @TurfCareCraig. How was the experience on Say Yes to the Dress? My wife was watching it one morning. Of course, they had the wedding ad look very nice. What was it called? I had no idea you guys were even on that show.
Thankfully, it's flown below the radar amongst my followers and viewers. But I never thought I would be on a show called Say Yes to the Dress. I'm honored to be a part of Morning Drive. And actually, the Say Yes to the Dress experience was pretty cool, certainly for my wife. She had watched it for a long time. She reached out to one of the producers, said, here's what we're doing. And sure enough, all of a sudden we had a production crew of 20 people following us around at Big Cedar Lodge, as we had kind of done a little mini elopement of 12 of our closest friends and couples, and sort of left families out of it, because you know what families can do to a wedding, and so we had just an amazing time, and the production, quality, and the people on the production of Say Yes to the Dress were top notch, and it was a really cool experience. And then what's nice is you have this kind of documented story of your wedding forever. Admittedly, I've probably maybe watched it twice. I think my wife has watched it 287 times. So, as you know, Nathan, if she's happy, I'm happy.
Well, that's right. That's rule number one. And I can't imagine talking about your family without talking about the little boy, because I remember not long after he was born, you posted a picture on Instagram. He had this huge, beautiful head of hair. I mean, he was full of hair. It was awesome. And he must have needed his first haircut when he was about 3 weeks old.
Yeah, he was born with a full head of hair, which was bizarre. But we named him Bandon. Ginella, Bandon Moke Ginella. So my grandfather's name was Moke. My uncle Tony, who I celebrate and got me into the game of golf, really, Uncle Tony, his middle name is Moke. I'm Matthew Moke, and now he's Bandon Moke Ginella. Named him Bandon, obviously, after Bandon Dunes. My wife agreed to the name, having not ever gone to Bandon, because she loved what the name meant, which is determined, friend of the people, optimistic. And then, so I got the green light to go with Bandon, which was cool because it's such a spiritual spot for me. And I've had so many great memories there with all my uncles and friends, and all the buddies trips I've been on there, and watching that whole resort be developed into what I think is the best pure golf experience in America. And then I got to take them to Bandon, both my wife Katie and baby Bandon, to Bandon Dunes last year around this time. And then last summer, we went to Ireland together and broke off from a trip to Waterville and went to Bandon Golf Club. What I'm working on out now is a story about how Bandon became Bandon, Oregon, and essentially how Bandon, my son, became Bandon by way of Bandon Dunes and Bandon Golf Club in Ireland. So there's this really cool connecting of dots that I've been able to do over the last year and a half or 2 years since we named him Bandon. And it's the story is so much richer and cooler the more I get to know. And so can you imagine bringing Bandon to the Bandon Golf Club in Ireland? We were well received by the secretary and the club president. We got a full tour of the golf course. We got to see the castle where several Lord Bandons have spent time, and overlooking the fifth fairway. So all cool stuff.
I'm assuming he's already got a set of clubs.
Oh yeah. Several, actually.
Speaking of family, I have 3 children, and they've kind of come and gone with golf. They've not really stuck with it, but it is interesting. I was actually speaking with Pat Jones from Golf Course Industry Magazine. He was on one of our early podcasts a couple of episodes back, and we were talking about this, what he sees as a future wave of new golfers coming into the game as more and more mothers pull their sons from football because of all the fears of concussion. Do you think that there's any truth to that? Do you see a surge coming in, like maybe we had back in the late 90s when Tiger first burst onto the scene?
Well, I would like to say yes. My experiences and what I'm seeing out there, certainly I've been, I remember a couple years ago going to an event at Poppy Hills, and Robert Trent Jones Jr. was there, sort of reopening Poppy Hills, kind of did a redesign. But at that meeting in the Northern California Golf Association, where I'm still a member of the NCGA, where I grew up going to NCGA events, here I was back at the home of the NCGA, and I heard about this, youth on course, an initiative to help grow the game by getting kids access to golf for $5 or less, such as sort of supplementing, the costs for kids to play golf. And I thought, wow, what a cool concept. So this was I don't know what that might have been 4 years ago. And I remember calling into Morning Drive and saying, "Hey, there's something going on here. It's already starting to spread. I think they're working on multiple states now, state golf associations, in which I think that this is such a cool concept. They basically raise money and pay the courses back to to make up the difference between $5 and whatever they normally charge juniors to play golf." And now I want to say they're in 27 different state golf associations, youth on course. They have, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you go to Youth on Course and their website, you get all the testimonials and all the numbers. I mean, it's a concept that's so great. It's literally sweeping the nation. So there's Baby Bandit.
There's Bandit.
But
yeah.
And then I think you've got First Tee that's been going on now for over 20 years. You've got guys like George Solich and the Solich brothers in Colorado at Common Ground, creating the Solich Golf Academy for kids. You got what John Ashworth is doing at Goat Hill Park with the creation of a 3-hole course specifically for kids called the Playground, as kind of a feeder system into what's happening at Goat Hill Park. You got him investing in junior golf academies. You got places like Cantini in Chicago that have always had a great junior golf program and a junior caddy program there. And I think you've got courses like Stream Song and Bandon and Cabot and the list goes on kind of, and the Loop at Forest Dunes, kind of saying, hey, take caddies, and, carts are not welcome, but walking is. And if you want to enhance that walking experience, take a caddy. And that's the kind of stuff that I think was needed in sort of golf in America to kind of augment and sort of bolster, what makes sense as a culture, the development and reinvestment in municipal golf. So like at Winter Park 9, kids can get access and have a great experience. I think football, my son's not playing tackle football. So, and I really hope he plays golf. But that's, if you watch the movie Concussion and you're a parent and you've got a kid playing tackle football, how do you justify that? I'm not sure you can. He's
definitely on to something there. And, neither one of my sons, they played when they were very young, but they kind of glommed on to basketball, as they got older. So, but, that's the great thing about these other short courses we talked about earlier. I think it's such a better way to introduce kids and beginners into the game without the anxiety.
Not to mention, Nathan, what about Topgolf and all the various other experiences we're having? Bobby Jones in Atlanta, just, Bob Cupp and what he did there with a little bit of a reversible routing and kind of making it fun and accessible for youth. And I mean, it's no longer like think outside the box. We're outside but there is no more box, really. I think that the walls of whatever we would call sort of traditional boxed golf in America, those have all come down because that's what needed to happen. The laws of supply and demand and all that, economics that goes along with it. There was an open door and an opportunity to say, okay, all that hard golf that was built through the 90s, chasing, tour stops and major championships, that was a bunch of double diamond runs. And now we're going back and building a lot more bunny slopes, or celebrating the bunny slopes that have been around for a long time, or reinvesting in those. And, some are going to make it, some aren't. And I think, I always say this, but I think it's really up to the communities to try to realize what they have in sort of green space and an option and opportunity for people to get out and spend quality time together in what we call this game of golf.
No, I think you're right. And it seems more accepting of the shorter courses. People don't just look at it and go, that's a little 9-hole par 3. I'm not going to waste my time. And in fact, our firm, we're looking at 2 projects in 2019 that used to be 18-hole regulation courses and are shut down, and coming in and turning them into short courses. So it's definitely a movement. And we've put this off long enough. I want to get to these Twitter questions and get those knocked out. But first, let me tell you about our sponsor, HavePaintGunWillTravel.com. Christmas is upon us and may even be here by the time you listen to this episode. That doesn't mean you can't buy a special gift for the golfer you know, even if that golfer is you. For those of you up north, snowbird season is upon us, and who wouldn't want one of these cool custom-engraved metal magnetic ball markers? These things are nice. They're very heavy. You'll be the envy of everyone in your group, or maybe just buy one for everyone in your foursome and you'll be the hero. They also have great ball caps with that unique paint gun silhouette logo on the front. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's great. Quantities are limited, so don't delay. Get yours today, and they're only available online and only at HavePaintGunWillTravel.com. Okay, now on to the questions. There were a ton of questions that were just repeated, so we weeded it out. But obviously, what's it like to have the best job in the world? I think you've already addressed all of that. But here's one from Gotta Ask K. Is there another job you would trade for your current job?
Oh man, that's a good question. I always wanted to be the play-by-play announcer for the San Diego Padres when I was a kid. I started really in radio. I was worked, interned at radio stations when I was in high school. I was sure I fell in love with sort of the romance of what is play-by-play radio, bringing the action to life for people who aren't watching. And I used to leave tapes for my dad to listen to on his bus rides from Santa Rosa to San Francisco. And I would create, games between the Giants and Padres, he being a Giants fan, me being a Padres fan. So if there was one job that I've sort of always wished I would have, would be the play-by-play announcer for the Padres. I'm a huge Tony Gwynn fan, and I've stuck with them through a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs. And it's a franchise that challenges you. But if they offered me that job right now, today, I probably would say, give me a couple more years and I'll get back to you.
All right, fair enough. From @Ryan Gevins, please ask him what he does with all the extra Link Soul gear. I'd gladly take it off his hands.
Well, I give it away at the WP9 Skins game a lot on Fridays, so you're always welcome to come by on Friday afternoons. We're using it as close to the pin wars. Sometimes if I've got an influx of it, everybody who buys in for the Skins game gets a pick out of the Link Soul box. Some of it goes to my nephews. Some of it goes to my other friends or colleagues or coworkers at Morning Drive. I try to spread the Link Soul love as best I can.
Let's see, from @Swatworthy, not sure if this is really in your wheelhouse. What should you do if you hit a passing car with your tee shot?
That's Run. Steve Davey. He's the current club champion at the Winter Park Golf Course, and at one of the recent Skins game, like I said, the corridors that sort of define the golf course are very crowded roads, and the cars are right up on you, which is sort of one of the funny stories of Keith and Riley redoing what WP9 and what they called the fishbowl, because all the changes and tweaks they were making to the golf course were heavily scrutinized by the people driving right by the golf course, which was interesting. But unfortunately, if you skull one on one of those tight lies they've created on sort of one of the half wedges into one of the greens, like I did on the 5th not long ago, and put one into sort of one of the tires of a passing car. Woman, very kindly got out of the car, took a look at the car, realized there was no damage, and gave me a wave and drove on. So I was wondering, I thought, oh, am I covered on this? How does my insurance cover this? It only made me feel better to know that the mayor of of Winter Park, who I was playing with that day, had hit a car off the tee on the same hole. So we double card that one off the tee and around the green. So it happens. It happens on a regular basis.
Okay, this is probably more this is in your wheelhouse. From EP Frisco, best small medium city for family fun and good golf for dad. And then it says Gulf Shores, Alabama. I'm not sure if he's from Gulf Shores or if he's asking you about Gulf Shores.
Gulf Shores is great. I did a story about an ambush, a group of guys that have been going to Gulf Shores for a long time. It looked phenomenal. There's, I just got back from Turning Stone, upstate New York, about not far from Syracuse, and they've got multiple courses up there, a ton of amenities, a really cool casino, a lot of great food, and awesome music venue. Turning Stone is a Golf Advisor round trip, and we're going to have one of those getaways on the back end of the airing of that show, and invite people up there to experience Turning Stone. I truly believe this is one of the kind of the flying below the radar buddies trip destinations in America. Super affordable, beautiful, clean, great accommodations, just a great vibe and energy. And golf courses are in perfect shape, and you got a mix of architects up there. So I think I'm all in on Turning Stone, especially summers in upstate New York. It's spectacular, and you can break away and try to catch a leather stocking golf course at Cooperstown, if you want to see the Baseball Hall of Fame and sort of include that all in the same trip, that'd make for a heck of a getaway.
Sure. Well, and you also answered the next tweet from Brian Tweed 16. He wanted to know what resort or golf destination flies under the radar. So I think you addressed that with Turning Stone. So let's do one more, and we'll wrap things up here. From @Jets Chris. Oh, this is probably the best question. What's your favorite Pearl Jam song?
Oh my gosh, I got a lot of them. And got to see Pearl Jam at Wrigley Field in Chicago not long ago, which was an amazing experience. Learning to Fly, I think, is probably my favorite Pearl Jam song. Given to Fly. Given to Fly, if you read the words and this story that's told there, reminds me a lot of my brother-in-law, who we lost probably 8 years ago, blood clot in the lung, tragedy, left his three sons behind, and I've always I'm really close to my sister, so that Given to Fly always reminds me of my brother-in-law and has always sort of separated itself as my favorite Pearl Jam song.
Well, that's a good place to leave it. Matt, I know you probably have a ton of things to get to, especially with Christmas right around the corner. So remember to follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Ginella GC and on Instagram at Matt_Ginella. Check him out on Golf Advisors Round Trip on the Golf Channel. You can follow me on Twitter at LipOuts. Follow the podcast on Twitter and like it on Facebook, both at LipOuts Podcast. And as always, all of this information and the links to the topics we've discussed will be on the website at lipoutspodcast.com. Once again, Matt, thanks for taking the time. I had a blast.
Nathan, I did as well. I really appreciate you asking me to be on, and really enjoyed the conversation. And hopefully we get to tee it up at the WP9 someday very soon.
Absolutely. So for Matt Ginella and everyone here at Watermark Golf Media, I'm your host, Nathan Crace, wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. We'll see you back here next time when we tee it up on the Lip Outs Podcast.
Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Watermark Golf Media. All rights reserved.